Greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Want to remind everybody, hit that like, share, and subscribe button for me if you would. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody that would be kind enough to share some love. Always appreciated, every little bit. And of course, the StreamYard link is down there for anybody who wants to join the panel. We are going to go over stateless. Can we use stateless as an exception, or can the states use a stateless being as an exception in regards to their jurisdiction and the foreign sovereign immunities that we were talking about earlier? So we're going to get right into it with a video I did a while back. Let me double check. It says December 14th, 2023. So what do we got? Almost 5 months ago. And what we're going to do is we're going to review this as it relates to the naturalization and the inauthentic claim of a nationality, because they presume everybody to be stateless, and through that stateless thing, in order for them to get jurisdiction, they need some kind of attachment as a domestic issue. And we've got Imperium Privatus with us. Greetings. How you doing tonight?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Good, good. So let's get into it. Let me get the
statelessness. What is statelessness? Buddy, Keith here. Keith, when everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. We're coming at you today to talk about statelessness. Statelessness. What is statelessness? And what happens if you are stateless? So let's take a look. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining me. Please be sure to hit that like, share.
And my apologies for the screen being screwed up here. I don't know what the deal is, but I know back when I was first starting these streams, and I'm still not the greatest at it. I still forget things here and there, but I don't know what the hell went on here with this screen. So bear with me. My apologies.
Share and subscribe button. There's a couple PayPal links down in the details section for anybody that wants to share some love. And we have, this is an article from Lexology, Horzio, Bromberg, and Newman, DC. Okay, and they say, as of September 26, 2014, as it relates to all the nationality and everything, it says, if you are like me, you just can't read enough decisions about diversity jurisdiction. Okay, hopefully you are not like me in that regard. Yeah, but you might still find a recent decision from the Third Circuit interesting. In it, the Third Circuit discussed what it means to be a stateless person for the purposes of diversity jurisdiction, the so-called stateless doctrine, and ultimately questioned the rationale behind the entire concept. In Frederick v. Davis, plaintiff and defendant, both American citizens, were passengers on a flight from Philadelphia to Germany. While plaintiff was standing in line for the bathroom, she claims that defendant fell on her and broke her arm. Plaintiff sued in federal court, claiming diversity jurisdiction, and defendant moved to dismiss for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. The defendant argued that although he was a citizen of Pennsylvania, he was domiciled in Germany and therefore was stateless for purposes of diversity jurisdiction, and thus could be sued under the diversity jurisdiction statute. The district court granted the motion, and the Third Circuit affirmed. It says plaintiff sued in federal court claiming diversity jurisdiction, and defendant moved to dismiss for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. The defendant
and understand what's going on here when they make that claim of stateless. It's in reference to a United States citizen still. The stateless doctrine is a federal law that says a U.S. citizen permanently domiciled abroad may not sue or be sued on the basis of diversity of citizenship. So that's what we were talking about earlier with the state's minimum contacts.
I have a question, Keith.
Sure.
Is stateless a concept only at law?
Correct. It's a federal doctrine. That's it. So that's talking about those statutes and executive orders. And we've got to remember the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act is the document that governs, not their doctrine of stateless. So this is just one thing that they're trying to use as a statute, under statute and stuff, as a cloak for their fraud Equity does not allow a statute to be used as a cloak for fraud.
Defendant's argument was that he was a citizen of Pennsylvania, but domiciled in Germany, and thus could be sued under the diversity jurisdiction statute. Under the diversity jurisdiction statute, district courts have jurisdiction over matters between citizens of different states, citizens of a state and citizens of a foreign state, citizens of different states in which citizens of foreign state are additional parties, and a foreign state as plaintiff, and citizens of a state or different states. But as the Frederick Court observed, for purposes of diversity jurisdiction, courts have explained that citizenship is synonymous with domicile, and domicile is the true, fixed, and permanent home and place of habitation. It is the place to which, whenever he is absent, he has the intention of returning. Under this rationale, Supreme Court has held that citizenship for diversity purposes requires that an individual be both a citizen of the United States and domiciled within the state. Under this rationale, the Supreme Court has held that citizenship for diversity purposes requires that an individual be both a citizen of the United States and domiciled within a state. If the individual is a U.S. citizen, but domiciled in a foreign state, that person is considered stateless, and a federal court cannot obtain jurisdiction.
So what we have is somebody that's a resident of the state, but a citizen of the United States. So now he's domiciled elsewhere. That's what creates the diversity of jurisdiction. And that's why it's an automatic federal question for federal removal, because it's an inauthentic claim
Over the person under diversity of jurisdiction statute. So what we're talking about here is, if you're born in the United States, but you're a resident of one of the states, you don't have any claim in a federal court. You have a hard time getting it to federal court unless you can figure out how to use that diversity of jurisdiction or diversity of citizenship. And that's what it's about.
And that's that Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. Again, I'm not a resident, and I'm not a United States citizen. There is no statelessness. I know the exact state of my being, and that is I am in this world, but not of this world. This is an extraterritorial jurisdiction in the form of the physical man that you see here, but the original jurisdiction is spiritual. I am in this world, but not of this world.
The diversity of citizenship is using that duality. If you have that duality, it's kind of like what do they call it? Dispatriation. If you were born in the United States, which I'm not going to say you are because it's an impossibility, but if you're a citizen of the United States and then you move out of the United States into one of the states and become domiciled there, they're telling you you're stateless. That's what I've been telling people all along about that dual citizenship. It's showing that you're the one that's confused. In Frederick, the district court concluded that defendant was an American citizen domiciled in Germany and was therefore stateless.
Another aspect of that is that once you leave the jurisdiction of your home, you are now subject to the jurisdiction of the foreign country or wherever that you're going to. And it's not a matter of subject to of the laws by contract, but by moral standards, moral ethics in a cultural exchange, to be respectful of those that are different than you and not be controversial and belligerent.
And therefore couldn't obtain jurisdiction. Among other things, the district court relied on the fact that the defendant has continuously resided in Germany since 1996, sold his home in Pennsylvania, and currently owns no property in the state. Let me get back to the reading here so you guys can see here. My apologies. And currently owns no property in the state, purchased a home in Germany, owns and operates a business that caters exclusively to German customers, holds a German driver's license, pays taxes in Germany, and has held a German residency permit since 2003. The Third Circuit affirmed this decision, but found the conclusion troubling because it closes the doors to the federal court to a citizen of a state who wishes to sue another citizen based on diversity. The Third Circuit further observed that the stateless person doctrine is an unintended consequence flowing from Congress' now possibly outdated assumption that U.S. citizens generally reside in the United States.
So what they've got, again, is that admiralty maritime jurisdiction for landlocked states. And that's actually what it's the true perspective from my point of view is that as people, single people, each one of us, we are landlocked when it comes to access to the international law through these supposed statutes, codes, rules, regulations, acts, edicts, ordinances, proclamations, and charters. We are not qualified to charter to be able to have some kind of privilege in a commercial system. We have a superior presence in we are the law in and of itself. And it's only because of our knowledge and what we've put forth generation after generation that poses this stuff. And I'm not subject to the feelers and opinions of anybody in my modern time, let alone those that are supposedly well established throughout the history of time that still to this day purport that you are somehow part of that system and subject to it automatically, when that is not so. That is an extraterritorial jurisdiction upon both your spiritual and your manual existence in a third-person representation of personal jurisdiction.
Again, accordingly, I'm telling you folks, if the United States is located in Washington, D.C., then Washington, D.C. is where the living place is, and the United States, as we know it, is merely nothing but a record, and you cannot...
Greetings, Rebel Studio. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good.
Hey, that mic sounds good tonight.
Cool.
Thank you, thank you.
live or reside in the United States. Like I said, you cannot be born in the United States, and there is no evidence anywhere that you do either one. You will never find anywhere that says United States, United States. It's Washington, D.C., folks. Just like it's Waterloo, Iowa, it wouldn't be Iowa, Iowa. Okay? Accordingly, although the Third Circuit applies the stateless person doctrine as it now exists, it did so reluctantly and invited Congress to consider taking another look at whether it is still appropriate or applicable. So, applicability.
And I'm telling you, simply again, because it's the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act that governs this stuff, it is not applicable. It is in fact listed in the statutes or executive orders, and that means if they're using it in that form, the exception is that general exception of some kind of association, the state's minimum contacts. Without that state's minimum contact, they have no way to pose any kind of exception. And we've been indoctrinated into accepting those applications and forms and everything as if though we're subject to them already, and we're not.
Diversity of citizenship. The technical aspect of it isn't that you have dual citizenship, but the fact that the citizens come from two different places. That's the diversity. The diversity means that there's differences. And so when we think about the dual citizenship, being born in the United States and now residing in one of the states, that's the difference. That's the difference. So let's take a look at the next one, because what we're talking about is refugees, or similar, not actually refugees, but something similar, as sojourners, transients, people that are not actually domiciled, but actually move around. See, domicile is like a permanent place of residence. Your intent is to always go home to that point of origin. So
we are in this world, but not of this world. So I'm just traveling around in this world, and my intent is to go back home. And so this refugee thing is again, like I said, it's a matter of a sojourner, and we temporarily rest. We dwell. That's a pause while we're in our journey with him. Again, he's always with us, and we're going to return home to our true estate, electrical or energy state of being. Go ahead.
Yeah, we use the word. I live in a dwelling. You know, I don't live actually in a home or a house, but a dwelling. You know, natural, back to nature words, because that's what we got to get back to. We got to stop using all their terms, in my opinion. Yep.
Yeah, when we learn all these terms and how they're being used in these different places, we learn how to use them right to set forth what our yay and nay is, so that is the bound, the bind, the bond, the band, the abundance of law.
Wow.
Go ahead.
One other thing I had figured out on my own, that with what I've heard, that pretty much, you don't live in that mailbox, and it's actually not on your property. It's on the federal land outside of your property. So that's not even your address. You just live in a dwelling that has a federal mailbox put next to your dwelling.
Yep, because
Yeah.
everybody's presumed to be a contract postal unit, and they're using proprietary equipment of somebody that has copyright, trademarks, and patents. And that's what you're paying for. That's what that change of address is for. You're acting as the agent of service in receivership through that change of address form. That's a simple contract that implies you're a common carrier of an insurance policy. And when you sign it, you're going to amend it and hand over your rights, titles, and interest in the name, the property. Greetings, Mitchell. How you doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. Great
You bet.
conversation.
Anytime. Thanks for being here.
A refugee. And they have, who is a refugee? Definitions. Refugee is a person who has fled his or her own country and cannot return due to fear of prosecution and has been given refugee status. Refugee status is given to applicants by the United Nations or by a third-party country, such as Australia. Migrants, asylum seekers, internally displaced persons. An internally displaced person is someone who is living inside the borders of their own country, but is unable to safely live in their own home or region. Why would it be unsafe to live in your own country or region here on the Americas? Well, it would be unsafe and detrimental if that corporate company known as United States, claiming a nationality, claims that you were born in the United States when that's not so. You were born in America. Okay? You weren't born in the United States. It's a record. You were born on American soil. That's what it's actually known as. United States is a record system. So, as we look at it, a stateless person is someone who does not have a nationality recognized by any country. Now, if you're born and conferred a nationality, then you cannot be stateless according to that. Yet, they turn around and claim that you're stateless because you're born in one place and now reside or domicile in another place. And therefore, though you were recognized as a nationality, now you're domiciled in a state. Remember what I said about the United States is nothing but a corporation, and now you're claiming that you're domiciled in the state, which is a corporation as well.
So again, you truly don't have a nationality. And again, I'll remind you, that's not a bad thing. Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. There is a superior capacity to being a national, and that is the international. Somebody that is extraterritorial of being a national, and that means outside of being a national. That's the international. I'm in this world, but not of this world. I'm not a national.
So still, you have failed to make a proper and valid claim of any real nationality. If that's what you're going to do, this is not legal advice. I prefer to stick with the scripture that says, born a prophet unto the nations. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. And before I sanctified thee, I ordained thee as a prophet unto the nations. Not of the nation or in the nation, but unto the nation, meaning an outside source that goes unto the nation and prophets to the people of that nation. I don't suggest Channel 3 is asking, what if your father was born of another country, does not allow the child to have dual citizenship, or does that allow the child to have dual citizenship for both countries? Again, it's how you want to placate it. You can, when it comes to passports, you can get a passport under different names. Stars, movie stars, music entertainers, all kinds of people do this all the time. They get more than one passport, one under two different names. It's about anonymity and about maintaining that anonymity yourself. When you become an age of majority and you change your name by renaming yourself. So let's take a look at the next one.
And when people are doing that name change thing, if you're going to do that, again, it's not legal advice or anything, but it's based on the premise that you're not changing your name to evade any kind of legal or lawful consequences. That you're doing it with clean hands, sound mind, and patent intent of good faith.
UNHCR, Refugee Agency. UN Human Convention, Human Rights. What the hell? I'm having too many brain farts. I gotta quit smoking. UNHCR, who would protect stateless people, ending statelessness. See, they're trying to help everybody become a national. They need to end the statelessness. Okay, again, it depends upon your interpretation and comprehension of all this. But if the scripture is telling me that I was born a prophet unto the nations, and these people are trying to tell me I have to make some kind of national claim, then maybe they're the ones that are disillusioned. Just so you know, that's my point of view before we get any further into this. This is not legal advice. This is not medical advice. This is not spiritual advice. This is just my comprehension and my interpretation of the words before us. 1954 convention relating to the status of stateless persons and the 1961 convention on the reduction of statelessness are the key international conventions addressing statelessness. They are complemented by international human rights treaties and provisions relevant to the right to a nationality. So if you have a right to a nationality, you have a right away from a nationality. If you have the right to stay,
You have the right to contract. You have the right not to contract. That's that exception we talked about earlier. The general exception is that you walked into a contract, but you didn't know that's what was going on. To you, it was called an application. But if you don't understand that application is a contract form, then you walked into a contract unknowingly, and that's unconscionable on your side, and it's inauthentic all the way through and through, even on your side. So if you have the right to contract, you have the right not to contract. If you have a right to a nationality, you have a right not to accept that nationality.
stay, you have the right to leave. If you have the right to leave, you have the right to stay. They all have their polar opposites. If you have a right to a nationality.
And again, I'll remind you, this premise alone, the fact that you have a right to a nationality tells us that there's the obverse dynamic or opposing dynamic that existed prior to qualifying for a nationality by applying for a nationality, and that is the fact that you didn't have a nationality to begin with. Again, admitted through logic and reason by the predicate of the term nationality to begin with. The same with naturalization. You were born naturally already. Why do you need a naturalization process? And if you don't want to have a nationality, then why do you need a nationality process?
Nationality, you have a right to decline the nationality. 1954 Convention is designed to ensure that stateless people enjoy a minimum set of human rights. Okay, the Ninth Amendment in the Constitution of the United States clarifies that there are rights that are not enumerated, and therefore that's placating that you cannot enumerate anybody's rights, whether you think they're stateless or not.
Absolutely. To make sure that you understand, the convention is designed to ensure that stateless people enjoy a minimum set of rights. But then in saying that, they're acknowledging, and you should read into it, that there are more rights that exist above that minimum set. What are they?
Hire these people that think they know what they're doing in this political arena and then spew this blasphemous bullshit that's inconsistent and proves that they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. If the Ninth Amendment clarifies that there are rights that may not be known and are not enumerated, then who the fuck do all these national leaders think they are going to the UN and placating that way you have to have a nationality? No, you don't. You don't. So let's discuss that first and foremost. The reason you would need a nationality is to know where you're going home to. Again, they want to bury you in the soil. After you die, they descend. No, we've already descended and we're on a life path to ascend. So by
the meek shall inherit the earth. You know, the weak and cowardly and timid, those that want to bury their heads in the sand and bury their talents. The meek shall inherit the earth. While again in those same scriptures, it tells us that the children of God shall inherit heaven. So it's two choices again, and most people think that they're going to inherit the earth. I think you've been misled again by the language. I speak boldly as I ought to. I am not going to be meek about it. If I have to stand against Satan, do you think that meekness is going to help me? It's going to help him bury me, and that's how I'll inherit the earth. I'm not going to be meek.
By creating a nationality so they can bury you in the ground and put a headstone and a ledger stone over there with your name in all caps, telling people where you came from. No, we didn't come from earth. We live here. That's it. We are merely passing through. We are just like the angels. We ascended or descended, and we are meant to ascend.
We are just a pass-through for a message. And if the message passes through us accordingly and we're able to filter it so it returns back to source, that's the way I interpret things that are supposed to happen. If we don't, and we live our life in sin, we get buried in the ground and the message gets buried with us and nobody talks about us again unless they see that name on that block, and then it's, well, who was that? I never heard about him.
Yes. You have the right to change it anytime you want. That's what it's about, your ability to act as your own self. So, 1961, well, let's finish this. It establishes the legal definition of a stateless person. The legal definition of a stateless person. Again, if we were born prophets unto the nations, then why do we need a legal definition of a stateless person? As someone who is not recognized as a national by any state under the operation of its laws. Again, if we are born as prophets unto the nations, then why is it everybody is insisting that we be recognized as a national? That goes against the very scriptures that were used as a foundation of the very laws that they're posing in this country. Simply put, this means that a stateless person is someone who does not have a nationality of any country. The 1954 convention also establishes minimum standards of treatment for stateless people in respect to a number of rights. These include, but are not limited to, the right to education. Remember, I said it's my right to express myself. It's your right to know. Everybody has a right to know, and everybody has a right to express what they know. So once I know,
It's always most imperative to understand or comprehend the true benefit is knowledge, and therefore that is the true obligation as well. Once I know something, I have an obligation to share it.
it, I have a right to express it. If it's something that's pertinent to you, then I have a duty to express it. Employment and housing. Now, the employment is a little bit obfuscated because they claim employment to be something like down at McDonald's. But even that employment, you have to have some kind of state ID. So when we're talking about employment here, it's common law employment, the right to contract privately. Okay.
And that that the right to contract privately automatically is displaced under common law by commercial use of a license or an ID to get that job. You're presenting an ID of a resident or a United States citizen. And that's the problem. You're being presumed to be contracting in that capacity and not your private capacity. This is why you got to learn how to quit giving them all that information. Say, tell you what, I can give you the social security number in lieu of the name and address, and you're going to have to make sure that any kind of bills and stuff go to them. This goes in any case. Have all the billing done through them, and they'll issue the credits through a credit ledgering and not a check from the employer. And again, that's just my opinion of how I think it's supposed to work if we do things right. They're truly the trustee on the state level for the judicial record kept by the Postal Service that's supposed to match up with the general ledger. So the state ledger is supposed to make sure it matches up with the general ledger. Who controls that state ledger? The Social Security Administration, through all transactions being kept record of, and that's reported to the Secretary of State, State Treasury. They keep a fiscal record on all of your commercial activities. Every last one of those commercial transactions goes back to them, with the exception of things like cash transactions, when you go to a garage sale or something like that.
Importantly, the 1954 convention also guarantees stateless people a right to identify or a right to identity, travel documents, and administrative assistance. Right to identity. Okay, that's the private credentials. Travel documents, that's your diplomatic accord, your diplomatic treaties, your diplomatic amnesty. You are working in commission with the place that you were born. Why would anybody in the place that you were born, particularly a fictitious corporate entity, claim that you're the enemy when they're the foreigners? Okay, you are not the foreigner, folks. The corporation is the foreigner, and that is why you are foreign to them, but they are the invading force, not you.
And you are natural to the land. Again, it cannot be possible to require somebody a naturalization process unless, again, it's under statutes or executive orders, which are attached to commercial items. And if you're using that against a beneficiary, that's using a statute as a cloak for fraud. Go ahead.
Yeah, I found out that somehow America is united with Washington, D.C. to work with Washington, D.C. And that's just one thing. I don't know how that came about. And the other thing is that with the post office, you go in there and you tell them, I don't live at an address. I live in a dwelling. That address is to say in care of, and then you write the address that's on that federal mailbox that sits outside of my outside of my dwelling. And so it does not belong to me and it is not mine. So I don't live at that address. It just has to say in care of and then that address.
Right. And that's why I expressed the 5-line address that I spoke of earlier, because I don't even use last names. I use capacities. Brother Keith, in ecclesia, care of Joyce. So there's 2 capacities and 2 people named, not persons. There's no last name. So how are they going to connect it to a corporate entity if I never gave them a first and last name in that article?
Again, you were born on this land. They were created out of thin air. The administrative assistants, and not an administrative oversight saying they are your authority. Just an administrative assistance. Okay, this is the difference between immigrants that come into this country and they get the administrative assistance, and they're not considered subject because they have a social security number. You see the difference, folks? That identification says you're part of the system and that you have to qualify that nationality. Okay.
And now you're subject to the administration rather than getting assistance. See, they consider you domestic rather than foreign.
When you come from another country, it doesn't matter what country you come from. It doesn't matter what nationality you hold. You come in as an immigrant and you have a right of education, employment, housing, and administrative assistance, identity, and travel documents.
And you have the same rights. The problem with that is those immigrants aren't going to get any better public education than you are. So it's not going to do them any better than it did you. And look where you're at. So the only true benefit they get is by taking advantage of it and never giving the information that we're required to. And they move all over the place.
They give all this stuff to everybody else, but the people that were born here, they hold that against you. They charge you for shit. They tell you you have to register your children for school. You have to register that motor vehicle. No, you don't. You must learn how to read to be able to rebut that shit. And I'm not telling you you have to read. I'm telling you the only way you can rebut it is by learning how to read. You don't have to. You can keep on being a bitch-ass slave. There were 83 states party to the 1954 convention in November 2014 when teams at UNHCR launched a campaign to end statelessness in 10 years.
To end statelessness in 10 years. In other words, they're trying to indoctrinate everybody into believing you have to have a nationality in order to live. This is the same thing that they're placating in the public education systems around the world, that when you learn this stuff, you'll then know how to live the rest of your life, and you can live as an adult. Otherwise, you can't live as an adult. You'll die. Something terrible is gonna happen. You're gonna miss out a huge part of your life because you don't know trigonometry or something. No, that's not the way it works, folks. That public education system is fine and dandy for certain things, but the certain thing about it is that it does not teach you how to think for yourself.
That's 2025, folks. 2024. This is that new world order, the one world order. They want everybody to make a false claim. They want everybody to dismiss that they have a duty that was sanctified and ordained through God as a prophet unto the nations. They want everybody to dismiss that one thing, that somebody else knew them before they were formed in the belly. Because as far as the record shows, ain't nothing like that happened. Someday, somebody just magically appeared out of a basket. And there they are. They're a foundling in a hospital. Don't know where they came from. Don't know mom and dad, nothing. There's a document that was signed by an informant. Yeah, see?
Hey, Keith.
Hey, Mitch.
Hey, man. So I was trying to get a little clarity on something. If I consider my nationality basically my family, I can still be stateless, right?
Again, we've got to realize that term stateless is their definition. It's being defined by them, and that stateless is in reference to your state of being. No matter how you look at it.
Okay.
What was your state of being when you were born? Were you born of this nation? What is your state of being now? Are you of a different nation where we can classify you as not having that nationality anymore? And since you've only got minimum state contacts, you really don't have a nationality of a state either? See, that's that state. That's that stateless thing that they're talking about, is according to a nationality. But my state of being is that I'm not required to have a nationality.
It can also depend on if establishing your own micronation. I mean, in the Bible, it does
Right. That's
indicate that
what
out of one womb came two nations.
right, and that's what Steve and I were talking about last week on the indigenous government. You know, we have to be able to establish that thing about the Christian scriptures that say those that have followed the law without knowing the law and have done so in their heart what the law says are a law unto themselves. See, again, we don't need their national laws and stuff. We simply need to understand right and wrong. And when it comes to this stateless being, they're trying to say that they have jurisdiction over stateless beings in their special maritime territorial jurisdiction because they don't have a nationality, and that's false. My standing, again, is Jeremiah 1:5. I'm supposed to be a prophet unto the nations, so sanctified and ordained, and no nation should be able to use their ordinances to sanction me in what I say. My yea is my yea, my nay is my nay. I don't define stateless being as what you do. You claim stateless being as not having a nationality. Well, my state of being is I'm not required to have a nationality, and therefore you're using a nationality as an exception to the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, saying that I have minimum state contacts claiming that nationality.
That's the explanation I needed to hear. Yeah, thank you.
I have another thing according to that. Would that be considered forced labor or forced association if you're trying to put you in some sort of container?
Yeah, that's the freedom of association. Again, that's minimum state contacts that they're using as an exception to say that, yeah, you're subject to this and then force you to do it. So both. And then there's care of, according to IRS, is trustee. And that's why I was saying Brother Keith in Ecclesia, and then care of Joyce. That's expressing a trust. And it's obviously a private trust. And so if they have any questions, they need to go to Joyce, the express trustee, and ask her. And she is my trustee. I'm the beneficiary, and vice versa. I am her trustee, and she is the beneficiary. So they have to talk to us, the two witnesses, in accordance to either one of ours private trust.
And so, in effect, that is your nation to them, right? I mean,
the nation extends to the family.
Yes. Okay. That's all right. I think I got it. My head wrapped around.
But it would have to be expressed too. Meaning you should have your organic constitution.
Well, yeah, it's what constitutes you. And in that, you don't even have to write it down. What constitutes me is the Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. And of course, obviously, Genesis 2:7, God formed man of the dust of the ground. And when he breathed the breath of life into his nostrils, man became a living soul. So what constitutes my living soul is the breath of God after he formed me with the dirt of the ground. So I'm constituted by God, again, sanctified and ordained.
That completes the cycle in my mind because I feel that you have to have provenance. You can't just appear. You have to come from somewhere.
Yeah, and that's why I say God formed man of the dust of the ground, and that was
that's your constitution, and not the constitution of a whatever. That doesn't define you or whatever. That doesn't make you. So
correct.
That's where we're getting tricked. Cool.
Yeah, so the constitution there in the material world is that Dad planted the seed. That's the dust of the ground. And he planted that that seed in the waters of Mom's belly. And then when that water and dust mixed and formed into a molded body, and it was expelled, discharged from Mother's waters, and took its first breath, it then became a living soul. Nobody memorialized that. Nobody made a private memorandum of law. And so that part being skipped, it was entered into their system, which is a legal system, and that is the problem. That's the exception. That's where they're saying that you don't have that foreign sovereign immunity because you are part of the association because you were entered as such. However, that's enumeration at birth, and it never gave me a choice. What it gave me was indoctrination, wherein I'm paying for my father's sins because he too was indoctrinated.
Thinking about what's happening here. The next one, as it relates to those identity documents and everything, we're talking about that travel document. And it was discussed in 1951, like it says, and UN's had these travel documents set up since then. So let's go read. Most of the time, when you want to cross an international border, you need to present a passport. It says most of the time. What are the times that you don't? What are the times that you can do this and you don't have to show a passport? It's telling you that if you learn how to read in between the lines, folks, most of the time, when you want to cross an international border, you need to present a.
So I want to ask you, Mitch, you ought to know the answer to this one for sure. If each state is its own nation, do you need a passport to travel from state to state? Or they just tell you driver's license? What's the difference? They're both licenses.
Yep. I believe that if we revert back to because we have the right to change our nationality, so we just say I live in the Republic of America. I don't live in this United States of America that y'all are ran under. I live in a dwelling. I don't live in an address, and then it helps us revert back to the Declaration of Independence that was created for Americans. Because the U.S. Constitution was created just to restrain the government after the government was created. So if we get away from that other and go back to the Declaration of Independence and Republic of America, then we've separated ourselves and changing the address and where we live, getting that straight and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and that republic is still there. You have a republic if you can keep it. People lost it, and it's still there, and you can get it. It's a comprehension thing, and that comprehension that is that as a republic, it's the people that truly govern. The ones that govern themselves know how to help the government govern those that don't know how to govern themselves. So I'm not against the government. I do recognize the federal government. I know it for the exact definition that most people don't ever think about. Federal government means all entities of the government of the United States, including the United States Postal Service as the registered agent, and the Postal Regulatory Commission that holds the trademark. Go ahead, Mitch.
Not to digress, but just to tie it in, I think this is why you keep saying we are the law, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it says in scripture, I think it's let me pull it up. Matthew something I'm sorry, Romans. Romans 2, verse 14. Dang it. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these, having not the law, are a law unto themselves. This is simply knowing right from wrong.
Passport. And passports, as most people know, are issued by governments to its citizens. So if you're stateless.
So passports are issued by governments to its citizens. Who issues the passport? Do you get the passport down at the local library? Do you get it at the school? Do you get it at the executive offices of the government?
Post
Or
office.
the Postal Service. So
Yeah,
who's
so you can legally, create your own ID and actually have it certified, so that way it can be used. That way you
yeah,
put it how you want it, and then you're not put in their system no
yeah,
capitalization of any
yeah,
letters, and
yeah,
you just put,
yeah,
what you need to put keep you out of their system.
yeah, it's the diplomatic channels of notice. Hey, I've got diplomacy here. I'm the diplomat. I'm the big dog. It's his house, and we're playing with his chips.
And then you get travel documents. Still travel documents, aren't they? Why do you need travel documents? I'm not saying that you need them, but some of these documents might be wise if you can clarify what they're for. And that is not to identify you so much as a national, but to be able to clarify that you're not a thief or a criminal that is escaping one country and running to another. That might be a viable reason. I don't know. I prefer to think that if somebody's just traveling along on their own, peaceful, that, gosh darn it, I think I have that same right. So why would I impose some kind of restriction upon that to somebody else? See, I don't know anything about that person as I see him traveling along unless I go up and ask him for identification. And it's
And this is what I pose about the United States passport, is if they're requiring you to have a passport before you can leave, that sounds like without that passport, you're imprisoned.
only because of identification that I would find out if he was a criminal in another country. You see where we're going with this, folks? All of this stuff is so convoluted that it almost seems like it's meant to stop you in your tracks. But what happens to refugees unable to obtain a passport from the government of their country of origin? Refugees are persons fleeing persecution, conflict, or violence in their country of origin, such as 94 cases, repeatedly, time and time again, and therefore cannot reasonably approach the authorities of their countries of origin to obtain a passport, as this might put them at serious risk of harm. For a refugee, being in contact with the country he or she fled from might be life-threatening.
And Joshua Junio says USC 2270-102 states the Bill of Rights, Northwest Ordinance, 13 colonies. The rest is territory. We have to realize that in modern parlance, things have been implied and assumed so much that you really don't know what anybody's doing. So when you get down to the very truth of it, the only thing, again, through my research, the only thing that really matters is that initial interaction where somebody entered some information into their system that says now we have a minimum state contact, which is an exception to a foreign sovereign immunity. You're now associated. It's futile. You are part of the Borg. No, it's not futile. Their claim is inauthentic to begin with. Ab initio, nunc pro tunc. I never took upon such a thing. Had I known that's what was happening, I'd have never undertaken all these other signatures. I'd have never done it.
And before we get any further, to obtain a passport, again, it's not to leave the country, yet that's what happens. You are prevented from leaving a country if you don't have a passport. It sounds like that country is holding you prisoner, doesn't it? I urge you to read up on visa. Visa is an invitation. If I have a friend in Germany and I want to go visit Germany, and that friend says, "Hey, I got a friend that's going to come over from America and visit. He's going to come over here. He's going to teach us about American society. And while he's here, we're going to do some cultural exchanges by teaching him about our society." That's called.
And that's all it is. It's a matter of diplomatic channels of notice to let a foreign country know that you're coming and what your purpose for coming is. A gentleman announces his presence. Oh, okay. Well, sure. Come on over. And while you're there, you keep in touch with them. You keep in communication with them. You let them know how you're doing. It's a co-mission. You're on the same mission to exchange cultural differences so that we can come together in a greater abundance. That's all it is. No reason for war. The only reason there's war is because people have that greed and gluttony and self-centered narcissistic belief that they deserve more than the next guy for some odd reason.
Freely given what was given freely. This is what we're meant to do, people. And this commercial identification system is preventing that. And we instituted at the age of 5 years old by teaching our children the legal name and an address so they know how to get back home. For crying out fucking loud. For a refugee, being in contact with the country he or she fled from might be life-threatening or put his or her family or relatives at risk. What do they do if you take off and go out of the country while being some kind of criminal or something, and they already have record of you being a criminal? There's generally some kind of second surety along the line. You know, maybe you put a house up for for bail to get out of jail, and it happened to be mom and dad's house or your brother's house or something like that, and then you fly off and take off. Now they're going to come after your family. That's how this system works, people. What don't you get?
And that's what that passport is all about, folks. It's allowing that surety to go out into the international area. It's all about the surety and indemnification. That passport is indemnifying the Postal Service in the United States in case you go out transiting in one of their territorial jurisdictions outside of the United States and still cause trouble. Say I've got 6 offenses here and I want to go to Germany and it's illegal to smoke marijuana over in Germany, and I go over there and I start smoking Germany, they can haul my ass back to the United States under the stateless being and prosecute me, because that's a minimum state contact with an exception at the international level.
Yeah, it's here to destroy your family. Okay. Or what if the person is stateless? In other words, a person who is not recognized as a citizen of any state, therefore has no state from which to request a passport. Refugees and stateless persons very often do not have access to the national passports that most of us take for granted. Okay. For these reasons, refugees and stateless persons rely on their host state. What is a host? A host is one that's there naturally. The state is not the host. The state cannot be a host. The state is a fiction. Get it through your thick skulls.
See, we are in this world and not of this world. The earth itself, Mother Nature, is our host. Law of nations, otherwise known as the principles of the laws of nature and her God. And with that, we come to the end of it. What do you guys got?
Well, that helped me pull things together in my mind a lot. Thank you for the presentation, man. That was good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you got any questions, always feel free to ask. Like I said, I like how your mind works, and I think you made some very good points on that video the other day that I hadn't even thought about. And that was a simple fact that even if we're in a public building and they're stopping us, that's a violation of our right to movement, right to travel, as well as denial of access to justice. That was a good one.
Thanks, man.
So what about you guys? You guys got anything else on the way out?
No, just the word, the term host got me thinking how they have most people out here as consumers being parasites.
Yeah, it's another one of those like switcheroo things. And what I want to point out here is when it comes to the actual term host, the first noun one is one who receives guests. One who receives guests. A landlord is one who receives guests. And when it comes when it comes to the state being the host, that's what we're looking at. It's the admiralty law of the land, and they're playing guest, or they're hosting guests on the maritime side of foreign contractors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does to me. Is like I was mentioning, to me, the economy is the collective of businesses. And if you go look at what employer is, that's master, employee, servant, master-servant doctrine. Now you got the hosts. I guess you could say the plantations are the hosts, or the collective.
Yep.
Which then is like the state administering all the business, which what people consider, or what law considers the public. I think a lot of people get confused where they believe the public is the actual people, but the public is actually the economy.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, guys, we are done. And again, I want to thank everybody for your support I want to remind you, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There is a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. Every little bit is appreciated. And you know me, I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. And that's to say, I don't care if you don't respect me. I don't care if you hate me. And that's on you. So in the meantime, may God bless you and have a good night. We'll see you again next time.